Okay, excellent. Well, happy Financial Fitness Friday. This is our next kind of veteran specific topic. Granted, it actually works for anybody, regardless if they have a pension, and Social Security is one of those that most everybody will have as well. But we'll talk about that. But first, a quick disclaimer. And if you guys don't mind coming off video or coming on video, it's I can see people's reactions and see what they're, like whether they're bored, need to move on, or if things aren't seem to be making sense.
Well,
But if
I
not, I
don't
can
mind doing
understand.
it, but I am eating lunch.
Okay. The other thing we just want to make sure is everybody okay with. Um, so this is as a disclaimer. This is for educational purposes. These are not specific recommendations um, for anybody. The These aren't sanctioned or sponsored by Viasat, but I do have approval to do these. And I'm not your financial advisor, so if you want, seek out a fiduciary financial advisor for actual advice and recommendations. And then I do these recordings that I can post them on the website and YouTube that other people can download them. Can everybody give me a thumbs up that they're okay with, me uploading them onto okay. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Dustin. Okay. I think that's everybody. Sergio, did you? I thought I saw that, but okay. Next, and I don't have a poll this time. There's just a couple things I want to check with everybody on. Has everybody created their Social Security account online? It's like SSA.gov. If you
Yeah,
have,
but I went on about a week or two ago and it wasn't working. So I don't know if maybe that's something on my end or if
I'd
anybody
say
else is
that's
experiencing it.
probably just the website. It's working right now. Like if you go on, so that's probably just poor website administration is my guess. But if you haven't created your account, go and do it, regardless of how young you are, because really you want to do that so that you're in control of it. Because people can go in and hack in and create an account using your information, and then just like identity theft, it's just not fun. And then for other people, for people, if it's applicable, since it's December now, if you haven't done your backdoor Roth conversion for your IRA, I do that, which that's, if anybody has a question about that, we can talk about that at the end, but that's taking, if you're above the income limits for contributing directly to a Roth IRA, you can contribute to a traditional IRA and then convert that to Roth. But there's definitely certain things you need to understand about the pro rata rule and taxes to make sure it's the right thing for you. But any questions there? Okay, here's the agenda. We'll talk about just kind of going back over how much do you need for the thumb rules for needing for retirement, and then how does the impact of pension and disability. Those are really, I'm looking at towards military, but there's other pensions obviously as well, and then Social Security and how to accurately estimate that. And then we'll talk about some things that probably I didn't think about when I was in military either, was like Medicare. Like we heard healthcare for life. I didn't realize I was gonna be paying, Medicare premiums, once we turn 65, but that is the case. And then I'm going to go into what's called like minimum dignity floor. This is from the Retirement IRA show, a podcast, and it's just an interesting aspect, kind of when you're looking at discretionary versus non-discretionary expenses and how these financial planners do it. I think it's pretty interesting. It's just good to look at all the key kind of non-discretionary things that you should be thinking about when you're looking at your overall annual expenses. And then we'll quickly touch on WEP and GPO. There's Paul and I had a quick discussion about that earlier, and then since we're rolling into 2024, they have updated the retirement plan contribution limits. So I'll share those with you so that you can start updating your allotments as needed. Okay. Okay. So how much do you need to retire? Anybody want to, like, what's the thumb rule for being financially independent, or like I like to call financial freedom? Anybody have any thoughts? Well, I mean, ultimately what financial independence is where your investments are making enough money that you no longer have to be dependent on a salary, or dependent on anybody else. That it'll make enough money where you don't have to work for the rest of your life. And the investments, you got to obviously have some in the market, but your investments will make enough to um, or that you don't have to worry about it for the rest of life. This came out of Bill Bangan was actually the first person that did this, and he looked at every decade from like from the before the Great Depression onward, and looked at the worst possible times, and no matter what, he came up with the 4% rule of thumb safe withdrawal rate, and this was using 50% bonds, 50% stock, very simple allocation, and what he found, like even in the worst of times, like I think it was he retired in like 1968 or something like that, right before we had the huge inflation and the market basically doing nothing. You could still, with 96% of the time, retire using a 4% withdrawal rate on your total amount. You could live for 30 years and never run out of money. And a lot of times, actually, almost half the time, it would almost quadruple in value. So just as a quick example to make sense of this, and the 25 times, so what you need really is 25 times what your annual expenses are. And that's the key, especially if you're young, that's a little bit harder to estimate, you know what I mean? You got to count for inflation, and who knows what you're really going to always spend, but you can at least figure out a lot of these things. But for an example, like say in retirement, you wanted to spend 100K, just for easy numbers. So to get there, to be financially independent, you need 2.25 times that. So you need a nest egg of 2.5 million. And then how that's related, like 100K every year, and that's adjusted for inflation. So as inflation goes up, you spend that more. So if it was 4% inflation, after year two, you'd be spending 104K, and it accounted for inflation, and you'd still be able to retire without running out of money. Most people want a little larger cushion than 25 times. Just go to like 28 to 30. But there's a balance there of working too long and enjoying your life. So it's just something to consider. But now, of course, how does a pension impact that? Well, you just take that right off the top. One thing about the 4% rule, though, is that's based on not the 100K that you're spending each year. That accounts for taxes as well. So if you have all your money if you have 2.5 million in a traditional IRA, that's assuming that you pay the taxes then when you pull that money out, and it doesn't count for it as after tax money. Does that make sense? So, okay, so I just gave a couple quick examples for pension and then disability. So let's say using that same example, if we needed 100K and you had a 40, and I'm using for this after tax money, and that's how I like to look at it on the pension, because the military pension, you can go in, and you should go in and you can adjust your federal and state taxes so that it comes out, and then you just use that money that goes in your checking account. That's what you get. That's what your pension is, in how I like to think of it, not the gross amount. But let's say you had a 40K pension, you still need $60,000 each year, right, in spending. So 60, now you still need a nest egg of 1.5 million, but you just saved it. It's that $40,000 pension is worth $1 million basically. Now, what if you had some disability? Disability is even better because one, it's not income, it's so it doesn't go into your, one, it's not taxable, but it also isn't considered income, whereas your military pension is, and so it won't increase your, you won't go to a higher tax bracket because you're receiving some amount of disability. It's just a compensation that they provide that's not income. So if you had 20K per year in disability, now using that, both that and the military pension, that'd be, you know, a total of 60,000. So you only need 40,000 now per year outside of what your pension is. And that is, you know, now you only need $1 million. So you've saved $1.5 million, you know, in needing a nest egg. In terms of being comfortable to retire. I just put down there reservists. We'll do a separate talk about reservist pay, but that's based on points, and it's a little more complicated. I'm not going to get into that here, but that starts at age 60. So that's another factor to consider, you know, for like Laura, you know, like, okay, how, you know, figuring that out when you want to retire, and then knowing that when that say you want to retire before then, okay, how much do I need until the gap, for the, you know, to cover the gap until I get that money coming in, and then, you know, how that impacts. But we'll go more into that when we do that. Additionally, Social Security, that's kind of similar, I almost think, to reservist retirement, because it doesn't it that's starts at 62 at the earliest, or you can push it out to age 70, and we'll go into the specifics of how much you lose or gain by starting Social Security early or delaying it until 70. No sense delaying it past 70 because you don't make any more money. It's kind of a master of the obvious thing, but it's ideal to have all your non-discretionary expenses covered by secure income, that being a pension, Social Security. You know, some even are considered. I'm not a big fan of annuities. I think that's the next, but I do think that's the next era of improved investing. You know, like I think, you know, as fees will come down, I think that's hopefully the next thing that is a good option. This, I just threw up a timeline, so just so you guys can see some ideas. I know there's kind of a lot of words here, but for people that want to retire early, so I use the example of starting at age 25 and saying this is just January of 2024, working for 30 years. You know, this is when this is when you retire. But these other things are, okay, here's catch-up contributions that you can do for your 401k and your IRA once the year you turn 50. There, and then if you retire at 50, the year you turn 55, the rule of 55 applies into, you can, normally you can't spend from your 401k accounts until, or TSP, until you're 59 and a half, correct? But if you retire from that company, when the year you're 55 or older, you can use that money penalty free. You can always withdraw the money, you know, but then you're paying 10% penalty. It's ridiculous. You know, like, what a waste of money, just throwing the fire. But what was I going to say? But this is a great way, and something to know about the rule of 55 is, let's say you you got a new job at like 53 at a new company, and so you don't have hardly anything in that 401k. Well, you could roll 401ks or your TSP. You know, if you needed that bridge to get to 59 and a half, you could roll your money from other 401ks into that company's 401k, you know, that your current employers, and use all that money. That makes sense. So, like, let's say I'm 54 and I start at Viasat. I can contribute for 1 year. You know, I contribute for 1 year and then I want to retire. Well, I could roll all my TSP or my 401ks from other companies into that, and then all that, even though it's from different accounts, now that it's in the employer that I'm currently at, that I retire from when I'm 55, I can use all that money. So just it's something to, you know, think about down the road. The other thing here, so I use the example of, a lot of people have too much money in traditional, you know, pre-tax money, and a lot of times, as you guys know, like, I'm a believer, as your salary goes up, yep, you want to start using more traditional. But then there's the gap years before you start taking Social Security, where your income is less, and that's the time to start doing Roth conversions. And with the updates in RMDs, you can now, if you got retired at 55, you could, assuming you're not born before 1960, you could do Roth conversions for 20 years, and that'll probably update as well. You know, like that's just current. What they changed with Secure 2.0 of updating the required minimum distribution ages, and I'm using 75 as the age, even though if you're born 51 to 59, it's 73 is the new RMD age, but those went up from 72 and 70 and a half previously, so that's all good for us. That's we don't have to pull out from our accounts. Let's see, but we'll have to pull out more because the actuary tables haven't changed really, so it's going to be a higher percentage you have to pull out. Does that make sense? Okay. And these are just examples. And then on the bottom, it just shows like, hey, when can you normally withdraw from accounts? And Roth IRA contributions can always be pulled out at any time. Conversions, et cetera, that's different. But and that goes into all these Roth or 5-year rules. But we're not. That's a separate topic as well. Anybody have any questions on the timeline here? And we'll go into these the haircuts and the Social Security stuff. But okay, yep. Here's the updated RMD with Secure 2.0 went into effect last year. So if your birth year is 51 to 59, RMDs begin at 73, but 6 years later, that's 75. They also dropped the penalty for RMDs, but I think that's actually going to be worse because they pretty much never charged that 50% RMD. So now I'm afraid that if you don't take your RMD appropriately, you actually will pay that penalty, which 25% is still a huge, hefty penalty to pay. So, but any questions there? Any questions, I guess, on RMDs in general? Okay. And there's no RMDs anymore there's no RMDs on Roth IRAs, and that Secure also changed it for Roth 401ks. There's no RMDs required anymore. They used to be prior to this last year.
Hey, Alan,
Yep.
How often are RMDs updated?
That's hard to say. You mean RMD ages, like what?
Yeah, the ages.
They've done it a lot lately.
Yeah.
I don't expect that to happen so much, but there's been, I mean, that's why I guess why you always have to be considered. Things are going to change. They've changed it like 2 years in a row, but I think I'd say they're not going to, because they hadn't for a long time before then.
Right.
So I wouldn't expect something for another 5 years or so is my guess. I think they've kind of got what they think out of Secure 2.0. So I don't anticipate changes at least for a while.
Okay.
But
thanks.
Yep, but it's been a number of changes recently. That's why I wanted to just bring that up. This is where you can, if you haven't set up your social security account already, to go there. The big thing, if you go onto your account, it assumes when you're trying to figure out what your actual benefit social security amount is going to be, it assumes you work until normal retirement age, which is 67. So if you plan to retire earlier than that, your estimate is going to be way off, likely, because it assumes that same amount of money you're making, through full retirement age. So the best thing to do is you can go download. That's the link right there. You can download the detailed calculator, and you get your own every year. You go right into on the account. You can see what your wages are, which everybody should look just to make sure that those are accurate. But you can then go and plug in all your wages for all those years in this calculator, and then you can decide what year you start making zero or some smaller amount. You know what I mean? When you retire, and then get an actual accurate estimation of what your Social Security is gonna be. So it's pretty cool. It's kind of it's like most government things. It's not the most user-friendly thing, but they have instructions and it takes a few minutes and you'll figure it out. But it's that'll give you much better you know, and you can say, okay, I want to retire at 55, 56, 57, and you can just make those adjustments and see how that's going to impact your Social Security. So, hey, Christian, what's going on? And just for people, just for like understanding, TIA is the primary insurance amount, and that's the amount of Social Security you would get at your full retirement age, which is 67. That'll probably change, all just like speaking of RMDs, as that's one of the adjustments they'll make as time goes on to, you know, try to keep Social Security going. One, that, you know, they keep increasing the wage base, but my big concern is that they might say, okay, at a certain asset level, you don't get Social Security, which maybe for billionaires, that's you know, they don't need Social Security. But you know, what if they said if people had a few $1 million, they don't need Social Security? That could really impact people's retirement plans. So I don't think they would do that. I think it would have to be an excessive amount, but that's something that Congress is kicking around, the idea of, you know, who, even if you paid into it, you might not be able to get it if you're worth too much. So we'll see. But if you take Social Security at 62, and too many people do this. It's the vast majority of people do, and it's sad, because you're losing 30% of your you know, primary insurance amount by taking it at that time. This goes by month. So one of the things I like to tell people is, hey, if you can hold off each month, you hold off, that's a percent you're not losing, you know, or beyond 67, that's a percent you're gaining each year. 8% per year. That's kind of like what this, you know, like most people use in terms of like what rate of return you can make in the market. You know, that's a good rate of return waiting if you can pull off, you know, push off the Social Security from 60, you know, 67 to 70. And that, if you're married, I wouldn't say both people need to do that, but the higher wage earner does. That it's the right one, because when one spouse passes away, the higher benefit remains. That makes sense. And then I know a lot of people are concerned that Social Security is going to go away. Look, even I can't see that happening. There's too many people depend on it, and even if it's not like you're paying into an account and that account's sitting there like, you know, your investment accounts, it's constantly paying out. What we pay in is going out to other people, so it's not like you have your own account. But even if that trust fund goes away, it's like 75 to 77% of Social Security would be funded anyway. So if you want to be a little conservative, you could do a small haircut on that, you know, primary insurance amount. But the idea that it's going to go away, which is kind of how I thought when I was, you know, really young, I just don't believe that can happen. So, and here's just example of, you know, how much, you know, that the haircut is in dollars and cents, just to get an idea. You know, if you take that money at 60, 62, you know, if people have a serious health condition or whatever, okay, I guess it makes sense to take it early. But in general, if you don't need to, you know, I'd wait wait as long as you can. It's a significant amount of difference in what you can make. You know, waiting until 70, that's a 24% increase on from 67. And then, like I said, those are all monthly. So if you took it at, you know, 68 and a half, you know, each month you can delay it is that much fractional percentage more that you're going to get out of it. It's not like you have to wait the entire year to get the 8%, if that makes sense. Okay, any questions on this? And that, back to the timeline, that's speaking of how much you need, there's the gap where if you don't have all your expenses covered by a pension or, you know, and or disability, then there's that period of time that you need to, you know, you have to cover the amount you get from Social Security until you start that amount. But then once you get Social Security, now you got military pension, Social Security, and potentially disability, and hopefully that covers all more than what your fixed expenses are. Okay, they had to pull up Medicare premiums because this, and this does a 2-year look back at how much you made 2 years ago. You can there's specific things. So if you retired, there's like 8 different things you can basically say, hey, that's not fair. I shouldn't be paying this high of premium. But this is what it is. And if you look at it, I did for a married couple how much they're spending per year just on Medicare premiums. And part, by the way, part A is we don't pay for. It's part B premium. That's the that's the medical insurance. That's all the services we get normally. And then part D is drug coverage. TRICARE for Life is what we get supplemental, but you can't get that until you signed up for and start paying Medicare Part B premiums. So, but it's probably the best supplemental insurance there is. Like I know Medigap, I think Scripps is canceling that for this year. So there's tons of people that are in Medicare trying to get a whole bunch of procedures done this December, just because they're losing a lot of their benefits. For it's Medicare Advantage. I don't know. It's one of those, but we're fortunate with for those that have military pension or military retirement, having TRICARE is likely the best. And there's no additional premium for TRICARE for Life, unlike the other supplemental insurances. Not everything's doesn't mean everything's covered 100%, but if it is covered by TRICARE and Medicare, you won't pay. And then if it's within network, you might have to pay up to 20%. And out of network, like and overseas, like 25%. But it's by far the best actual supplemental coverage. But you can see this is no joke. I mean, how much we're gonna have to be paying for medical. And I'll go into the next one. Oh, real quick on the bottom line of this, Fidelity in their 2022 study, they said that the average 65-year-old couple pay $315,000 in medical expenses throughout their life. So it sounds like it is a lot of money, but when it comes down to that's about probably a little over $10,000 a month or a year, assuming you live 30 years, like till 95. But it's a lot of money, but annuitized out, it's not quite as painful as it seems. But so this is from information here from the Retirement and IRA show. It's Jim and Chris. I've listened to them. They have I like some of their thoughts on retirement planning. And their whole point is they see too many people not spending enough. And so what they want is your what they consider minimum dignity floor is really minimum lifestyle floor. Food, your utilities, transportation, housing, and healthcare are all covered by secure income. So that'd be like pensions and social security, and they're even into like saying even annuities. So just that way, and then the rest of it is all fun money, and that allows people. Too often, people, especially good savers, they're not good spenders when they don't like seeing their retirement accounts drop in value, even though they're getting older. And they talk about the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years as you get older. And that's me. I think it's a great way to look at it. Like don't keep saving until you can't even go enjoy traveling overseas or skiing, whatever. Enjoy time now. You got to kind of balance both. But they have different numbers. In general, you want to probably use a 3% inflation rate. It is about probably a good average to use just for cost of living throughout life. But they bumped up some of these more because that's what they found based on their studies. And some of it food, they said, okay, they're trying to cover all those needed expenses so that you have your basic lifestyle covered. And it was interesting because it all came, this guy, Jim, he started this. This is how he became a financial planner. He was actually a police officer, and he was in a store, and there was this elderly lady that was getting her groceries, and she was like staring right at the cash register. And um, and then she couldn't pay for her like pound of strawberries or something like that, and had to set that aside because she only had Social Security money, and she didn't have anything else. And so he bought, he was like 30 or something like that. So he bought her the strawberries, and he kind of like, when he left, met him in the parking lot and explained to him like, um, just told him her situation and how, how thankful she was, but um, she can't even afford to buy strawberries. I mean, and he's like, what the heck? That's retirement? Like that's what, people are living on. This is ridiculous. And so that kind of shifted his whole life, his whole plan, and went into financial advising from being a police officer. But um, food, that includes a lot more than just food, but it doesn't include dining out. Dining out is fun money. It's not, it's not, it's discretionary. Whereas, and they said, I think they use, depending on how people eat, that could be $400 to $1,600, a month in just the food, not counting dining out. Utilities, so that includes kind of all, some things people don't think about: home security, trash, internet. Those things are all kind of part of utilities. That pretty much goes up with the normal inflation rate, about 3%. Transportation, so they assume, they found actually, and that's a link to the AAA report, but they've got it. AAA has got this broken down great, and they assume you buy a car every 7 years, but depending on the kind of car you have, they show what's the annual cost of a car, which is great. And they said they were trying to do all this work, and they're like, these guys are experts, and it's kind of a smoothed out, like sometimes you might need to replace your tires or whatever, but it's a great report that you can see, hey, what is the annual cost of a car. RVs, things like that, those aren't in transportation. That's fun money because that's not, this is minimum lifestyle floor. Housing, but housing, this is where they throw in a bunch of different insurances as well, just because they try to minimize the number of categories. But obviously, property tax, homeowners insurance, rent, mortgage, which mortgage will go away, at some point. Hopefully, a lot of people obviously try to have their mortgage paid off before they retire, but a lot of people go into it, and you know, with the interest rates where they were previously, if you were able to buy and refinance, um, paying that principal off early if you've got like a 3% or lower is like throwing money away almost. You could, I open a separate account and just I bet, total US stock market against my mortgage rate, and that's where my extra principal is going in. If I want down the road, then I can take that money and start paying it down, but to me, that's a smarter use of your money instead of, when they're giving away kind of free money, free loans at the time. Not the case with rates now, but we'll see. They'll probably drop back down to 5 or so after in a couple of years. But it does. The other things they put in was maintenance. Obviously, minimum $100. This is across the U.S. Obviously, California, San Diego, that's going to be a lot more. But these were the minimums they were doing. And then replacing appliances. And they said minimum $25 a month you got to consider. And that would assume $3,000 every 10 years as appliances break. I think that's still too conservative as well, but it's good. I thought this was interesting. They have pets. And I agree with that. Like pets are a minimum lifestyle for. They're not, I don't think of that as fun money. Like if you love pets, that's an important part of your life, and so that's something you want to make sure that's covered, always. And then they mentioned life insurance premiums, long-term care, even landscaping. They even add some others like care for grandchildren. And then if you're really into charitable giving, if that's a must-have, then they consider that as part of the minimum dignity floor. Healthcare, that you see that jump up 4.5 to 6.5% is what they're finding is the cost of healthcare going up. And as mentioned, 315K throughout retirement. So quite a bit of money. Anybody have any questions on this? But this is the whole point of this is they want all this to be under secure, funding, and then the rest, that's what your assets, all the stuff you put in your investment accounts are for. You can spend as much as you want. So you go buy that RV while you're young, go travel, go do all those things, and not waste, save your money and it go, if you want to leave a legacy, okay, great, but live your life. And this is how they found that they're able to get people to actually spend much more and really enjoy their life before they get too old and aren't able to do the things they thought they could do back when they were younger. Okay. Okay, now we'll quickly talk about this. So WEP and GPO, their windfall elimination program and government pension offset. So this does not impact military pensions. We pay into Social Security, and so we get all of our Social Security as well. But what these can do is, I just copied the explanation, but basically people can, if they got GPO, they won't get any Social Security, and then certain with WEP, their Social Security benefit can drop significantly. And this is mostly for there's a whole different group of people. If you click on that link, the WEP and GPO facts link, it goes into who's actually impacted. So it's a lot of state workers, teachers in certain states. I think in teachers in 15 states, police, firefighters, and some other postal workers hired before a certain year are impacted. And then it's mostly just basically people that haven't paid into Social Security as well. They and if they're married to somebody, it could be impacted. But fortunately, it does not impact us. But that link goes into all the different categories of who is actually impacted. Any questions on WEP or GPO? That's one that I remember thinking like, wait, did we fall into that when I first learned about it, like as veterans? But fortunately, did the research and nope, we get both because we paid into it. So here's a quick update on retirement plans. They only went up not as significantly as last year, but it's $500 more. So $23,000 for the 401k, 403b, 457. Catch-up contributions have remained the same. That's 7,500 for 401ks, and then that maximum limit is of $69,000. That's including all the profit sharing and additional things. But that's how much is really under that umbrella. And then if you're over 50 or 50 and over, there's another 7,500 tacked onto that. So if you can still only have elective deferrals of 23,000. The rest has to come from some kind of profit sharing, which that's whether it's a 401k match, other kinds of profit sharing. But you can see how much higher that really that umbrella of the 401k is. And if you have a side business on your own, especially, and if you're a solopreneur, you don't have employees, but you just have your own side business, you can open up a solo 401k and then dump 25% of your profits into the solo 401k. It's the best thing to do. In my thought is if you're have a single employer company. If you have more than that, you have to use that same match for all the employees, and then the owner gets actually a less. So I can explain that more, but solo 401k, you can boost up, that contribution amount to get up, if you had the means to get up near $70,000 or 76,500 if you're 50 or over. IRAs went up 500 again to 7,000, and then the catch up didn't change. Catch up contributions for IRAs through 50 plus are $1,000. And then HSA updates went up $300. Military retirees cannot use HSAs because we have TRICARE, but we can do FSAs. They haven't updated the FSA amounts yet, but for us, at least at Vita, it doesn't matter because that won't be till May. When that goes into effect. But and then there's but at the bottom there, Social Security wage base went up another $8,400. So more taxes for all of us. But that's all I've got. But I wanted you guys to be able to at least see that, so that you can go and make allotments. Adjust your allotments if needed. Okay,
Alan, I have a question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Can you back up a slide?
Yep. Maybe I can. There.
Right, these are non-Roth, correct?
It doesn't matter. They're Roth or traditional. They're all the same. The limits are the same. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you have a 401k and an IRA, can you contribute maximum to both?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and there are income limits on Roth. I didn't go. I was going to do that for the next year, but there's income limits for Roth, and Brian, that's where if you're above those income limits, you contribute to a non-tax deductible contribution to a traditional IRA, and then you can convert that to Roth. I used to just do it immediately, but the IRS can come and say, hey, we know you're kind of cheating the system, even though it's allowed. But so they said you should wait. So my thought is now contribute, and if you can contribute just all in January, timing the market is better than timing the market. If you could, max out, or you could just dollar cost average across, and then into your traditional IRA, and then in December, convert that all to Roth. If you made some gains, let's say you put in 7,000 and you made 10%, so you're at 7,700. You would pay taxes on the $700 when you did that conversion, but then that money, once it's in the Roth, grows, tax free forever. So it's still not that much. But there is the pro rata rule. You can't have, if you have a bunch of pre-tax money in a traditional IRA it aggregates all of them, then it doesn't make sense to do a Roth conversion, most likely, because, if you're trying to just move that annual IRA contribution to Roth. If that's, for example, I'll just go find it real quick. I've put the pro rata rule. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is example for how the backdoor Roth. Real quick, this is what a backdoor Roth conversion is. It's called it a loophole or what have you, but you make a non-deductible contribution to traditional IRA, invest it, then wait till about December because you need some time. I'm used to just immediately convert it, but that's not the right way to do it. Convert your traditional IRA to Roth, tax-free growth forever. But if you already have a bunch of money, and how this usually a lot of times is impacted is if people rolled a 401k into an IRA and it's a lot of pre-tax money, that how the IRS looks at it, let's say you have, for easy numbers, $94,000 pre-tax money in an traditional IRA. And then you take that after-tax money, that non-deductible contribution, I'm just saying 6,000, it's 7,000 next year, but you put in 6,000, and then you just want to backdoor that 6,000. You think you already paid taxes on it, right? Nope, that's not how the IRS looks at it. They look at all of your money in that traditional IRA, and you've got $100,000 of it, but 94,000 of it you've never paid taxes. You're going to pay taxes on 94% of that $6,000. Does that make sense? That's why you don't want a bunch of pre-tax money in a traditional IRA to do a backdoor Roth conversion for that IRA amount. What you can do is, if you've done that and you put a 401k or a TSP into an IRA, you can fold that into your company's 401k. Most of them all do that. So you could get rid of that money in your traditional IRA and put it into your 401k, and then you could backdoor Roth, since you wouldn't have pre-tax money in the traditional IRA. Does that make sense? Okay, and then go back to that's about it. Brian, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then, okay, that's actually all I had. One, just for your homework, go create your SSA account online if you haven't already. Update your allotment for 2024. And then, consider downloading that detailed calculator if you want to do, get a real accurate estimate of what you think Social Security will be. And do your backdoor Roth conversion if applicable. And here's just some other, topics. I'll put out a poll for those. These are just in general topics, not, veteran specific. And then these are the veteran specific topics we'll continue to do. We just did the factoring in any pension, but the other ones we'll do on a quarterly basis. Any questions or go backs or other? We've got a few minutes for you guys. That's it. Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
Well, yep, you're welcome. Was that helpful? I mean,
Yeah.
I think this topic was a little easier than some of the topics we go into. Like, I think more, I guess, common sense, I almost think of, like how to factor in pensions, but I think it's important. And hopefully that gave you, helped you out.
Hey, Alan,
Perfect.
quick
Yep.
quick go back. You might have said it, but what was the reason for waiting for just till December to do the version instead of immediately?
Yeah, so this I learned from Michael Kitces, who's like kind of the biggest brain in financial planning in the last 20 years. He was doing an interview with somebody, and there's if you just immediately backdoor it, the IRS can if they, and especially as they've hired a whole bunch more people when President Biden put what $80 billion and how many more 83,000 workers, they can say that you're violating the rule of not being able to contribute to a Roth IRA if your income's above this limit. And so there needs to be a waiting period, is what they're saying. And so what he's saying is to all his clients is don't immediately convert it, put to the traditional, and then towards the end of the year when oh yeah, my income's above the Roth, then you can convert it anyway, but it shows that you followed the rules, I guess. If that makes sense. So.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna